There's so much to unpack from this election. Part of it is also how alternative media was able to crush the major propagandist networks. But we won this time. Podcasts and shows like this one, Joe Rogan, my show, the All In podcast. The left couldn't keep up with it, from Bobby Kennedy to Tulsi Gabbard. And then finally, of course, it cannot be repeated enough. God bless Elon Musk. I mean, that guy put it all on the line.
Man, when have young people come out for the Republican? I mean, like never.
So, Megan, it is conceivable that without this record movement of youth vote, he doesn't win.
You know, we're living in the worst timeline possible when Charlie Kirk and Megyn Kelly, of all people, are making sense with their analysis of Donald Trump's election win. The influence of right-wing propaganda in their media ecosystem will be felt for the rest of our lives as the Republicans bet big on capturing the young male vote and are now reaping the rewards. And perhaps the worst part is that one of their own was a more effective political strategist than everyone on the DNC's payroll.
The former president's outreach to male voters seemingly paying off. In 2020 and 2016, about 4 in 10 men under 30 supported him. Yesterday, nearly half cast a ballot for Trump. Among men who turned out for the first time, 62% supporting Trump, while 36% supported Harris. The Trump campaign has taken an unconventional approach, including appearances with unconventional media figures popular with male voters. Trump even saying he consulted his son Barron for advice. And a key late campaign appearance on top podcaster Joe Rogan's show. Rogan later endorsing Trump.
Leave it to the Democratic Party to feel so entitled to winning the election that they were outsmarted and outclassed, frankly, by an 18-year-old Barron Trump. However, this is far from an anomaly or just a blip on the radar of the Democratic Party as a whole, because Trump's crushing victory revealed the single most important issue holding the Democrats back from true electoral success: remaining beholden to the corporate and ultra-rich donors who dictate the party's policy platform.
And the gap between the people on top and everybody else is getting wider and wider. And then, Kristen, on top of all of that, we got a corrupt campaign finance system which allows billionaires to buy elections. So if you're an average worker out there, you're saying, hey, I'm working longer and longer hours, going nowhere in a hurry, worried about my kids, and yet the people on top have never had it so good. Where is the Democratic Party? If you're an average working person out there, do you really think that the Democratic Party is going to the mats, taking on powerful special interests and fighting for you? I think the overwhelming answer is no. You could say that I'm for raising the minimum wage to a living wage, guarantee health care for all people, expanding Social Security. And by the way, I also support a woman's right to control her own body, etc. It's not either or, it's going forward in both directions.
The Democratic Party is not a left party. The Democratic Party is a center or center conservative party. There are a lot of true believers in that we can capitalism our way out of poverty in the Democratic Party. If anything, that's probably the majority.
Right.
And that's an area in which I agree with Dr. King, that assessment is flawed.
And we find ourselves, I believe, in a time where there are, let's say, peers in history of mass movements of people that mobilize to protect one another in times of fascism and authoritarianism. And this is the era that we are poised to enter. Authoritarians and people that he affiliates closely with and strongmen abroad in regimes like that, it is not uncommon to jail political dissidents or legislative opponents. This is the world that we very realistically may be entering. And the way that we do everything that we can to prevent this is by building a very strong social fabric and social infrastructure.
Bernie and AOC have been vocal about their issues with the Democratic Party establishment and the steps needed to earn back trust with working class voters. They understand that without real solutions and a focus on economic policies that benefit everyday people, the party is bound to lose its base. While there are people with real solutions within the party working to make change, the sad reality is that much of the party is focused on something else entirely.
There's one promise left that he could fulfill, being a transitional figure. He could resign the presidency in the next 30 days, make Kamala Harris the president of the United States.
Well, we need to take stock of why we are being held hostage to the far left. No one should be and wants to be kowtowing to the extremes of their own parties. Most Democrats I know think there's a huge problem at the border. Most Democrats I know think, frankly, that males at birth shouldn't play in women's sports and vice versa. Medicare for all is not something that the bulk of the Democratic Party believes in, but yet we spend tons of time on it. Now, on immigration, there are people who do believe, and I think I buy into it, that part of the problem we've had as Democrats is that we have gotten pulled to the left so far that we can't make common sense decisions. There's no evidence that the Bernie Sanders wing of the Democratic Party has met with any success or represents this party.
Liberals and establishment Democrats would rather accept symbolic, meaningless gestures and point fingers at their own base rather than looking inward and championing the populist left-wing economic agenda that actually improves the material conditions of their voters. But as I mentioned earlier, that will never happen unless the party divorces itself from the special interests that are playing with our lives and using our political system for their own profit.
When you have somebody like Kamala Harris, like Maurice said, who represents a party that is capitalist, just like the Republican Party is a capitalist party. They benefit from billionaire donors. So what they rely on, since their policies aren't fundamentally going to address the needs of the working class, they have to rely on certain messaging. And if Kamala Harris has mixed messages where she's starting off with this populism, but doesn't even say the word working class, did not say anything about Medicare for all, did not say anything about a $15 minimum wage, things that were tentpole issues for Bernie Sanders. So the way that they get those people back, I think looking at non-voters who are drawn to things like a $15 minimum wage and don't believe that populism requires racism.
The only thing she could do is go after corporate greed. She starts doing that. Then she is told by Tony West, her brother-in-law, not to do that anymore. Tony West is the top lawyer for Uber. It's absurd. Yeah. And that's the Democratic Party. And they set themselves up to fail. I'm even wondering when Tony West went into the ballot, did he even vote for her? Oh, wow. Now, he probably did because he'd like to see her in the White House because then he's in the Oval Office all the time. But he was actively sabotaging her campaign, whether he knew it or not.
The best way to materially improve the lives of working and middle-class voters is to remove as much special interest money from our political system as possible. Whether you're a Democrat or Republican, the influence of these donors, it creates policies that hurt the majority of Americans and benefit only the few. Real change won't come until we put an end to this system of legalized bribery and prioritize the needs of the people over corporate profits.
The former president has said that he doesn't support the CHIPS and Science Act. You voted against it. If you have a Republican majority in Congress and Trump in the White House, will you guys try to repeal that law?
Student journalist Luke Radel is going to show the rest of the feckless sellouts in the new media what a real reporter should be doing with their time in the field.
I expect that we probably will, but we haven't developed that part of the agenda yet. We got to get over the election first.
Would you vote to repeal or keep the CHIPS Act if that vote came?
No, obviously the CHIPS Act is hugely impactful here. I will remind him night and day how important the CHIPS Act is.
How does that message get to President Trump, who's called the CHIPS Act bad, when it's really vital for Central New York's future?
I would say that President Trump's comments, are important. Why a lot of things that got added to the CHIPS Act, which was a lot of Green New Deal type programs. We were opposed to in that bill was that it had too much crammed into it, and you had the Green New Deal stuff.
And just like that, Radel broke a massively important story with one direct question and a pointed follow-up mere days before the election. Not only was one of the most powerful Republican officials caught on camera saying that he would support repealing a law that directly benefited the district he was campaigning in, but Johnson and Williams had to play cleanup and run cover for Trump's criticism of the bill. Speaker Johnson is one of Trump's most important MAGA allies in the country, so he will say and do anything to stay in his dear leader's good graces.
And I think with our little secret, we're going to do really well with the House, right? Our little secret is having a big impact. He and I have a secret. We'll tell you what it is when the race is over.
Your guess is as good as ours to what Trump and Johnson could be plotting behind the scenes. But the fact remains, you can't trust Mike Johnson in the slightest, especially when he led the effort to overturn the 2020 election results in Trump's favor.
If Donald Trump does not win, do you commit to certifying the election results?
Kristen, I'm a constitutional law attorney. I've devoted my life, and demonstrated every day that I will uphold the Constitution. We are going to do our job in Congress. A free and fair and legal election will be certified, and that is our hope and prayer across the board. Of course I'm going to follow the Constitution. Yes, if the election is free and fair and legal, and we pray and hope that it is, there's a lot of work being done to make sure that's true. I think this one's going to be so large there'll be no question. I think Donald J. Trump is your next president, and that can't happen soon enough.
Will you, as Speaker of the House, play your part to certify the election results, no matter who wins the presidency?
Well, of course. If we have a free and fair election, we're going to follow the Constitution. I mean, I've taken an oath to uphold the Constitution. I always have my entire life. I demonstrated over and over and over. And so all this hyperbole and madness about, they're going to try to unwind the election, none of that is true. None of it. President Trump mentioned that we had a secret when he was in Madison Square Garden, and the secret is our telephone town halls. It's not some ulterior motive. The media went crazy over that, and there's just too much emotion, too much misinformation out there. Everybody needs to calm down. I think it's going to be too big to rig.
I don't believe for a second that Trump and Johnson's little secret is phone banking, okay? That's way too easy, and if there's one thing you know about the MAGA community, especially people in power, they are going to lie to you, and they're always up to something dangerous or illegal, or oftentimes, okay? And in this case, they're probably encouraging individuals to do something on their behalf that is outside the law or very dangerous, harmful to other people in order to get them the win they want in the election. And the reason why I think Trump and other Republicans have been very careful and selective with their language about the election, like promising only to certify a free and fair election and the too big to rig slogan, is because they want to remind people, look, the 2020 election was stolen from us. Joe Biden didn't win that fair and square. But now that we have all this more, so much more support, it's too big to rig, right? There's no way the Democrats can cheat their way into office, because we have tons of support that is going to outdo whatever the Democrats try to do. It's very intentional, okay? Like, people may say they're ignorant, and there is a lot of ignorance, but they are extremely well-versed in how to manipulate the public or certain people, right?
Healthcare reform is going to be a big part of the agenda. When I say we're going to have a very aggressive first 100 days agenda, we got a lot of things on the table.
No Obamacare?
No Obamacare.
Despite the dishonest characterizations from the Harris campaign, the audio and transcript made clear that I offered no such promise to end Obamacare, and in fact acknowledged that the policy is deeply ingrained in our healthcare system.
Healthcare is on the ballot this November. Speaker Mike Johnson is making clear that if Donald Trump wins, he and his Project 2025 allies in Congress will make sure there is, quote, no Obamacare. Effectively, what they're saying is he didn't call for wiping out the ACA. He's calling for making changes to it. What is Mike Johnson proposing to do? That is unclear. His office declined to say what kind of healthcare reforms he wants when I asked them, and they wouldn't say which parts of the ACA should stay, what should go, what should be changed. And remember, all of this comes in context of Donald Trump promising to replace the ACA.
The question came up about Obamacare, and I answered it very specifically. I said the ACA, unfortunately, is deeply ingrained in our healthcare system now. Do we need further improvements? Absolutely. We need to expand quality of care, access to care, and obviously lower the cost of healthcare. And I started talking about that. Well, they took a clip out of context and said that I said we were promising to repeal Obamacare. That's just not what I said. It's actually the opposite of that. Yeah. And so that's just another example of what they have nothing to run on. They have no policies of their own.
Aside from being a loyal lapdog to Trump and the MAGA agenda of harming working class voters as much as possible, Mike Johnson is also a major figure in the Christian nationalism movement, signaling to fundamentalist Christians that the Republican Party is willing to vote one of their own into a real position of power and cave to their policy demands. Which brings us to this secretly recorded meeting of pro-Trump pastors.
We made tremendous progress. Well, look, 3 Supreme Court justices. 300 judges all over the country. With you people, and we're going to do a lot of things. We're going to set up a faith office in the White House. Come on. Have a limit, it's called. I don't know how many calls I'll take, but we'll have a limit of 10 per day or something. I know these people, they'll call me a lot.
And the other thing that we need to point out, fundamentalist Christianity has really shaped and influenced the entirety of Trump's campaign and administration, because it goes back to one thing: white supremacy, and believing that Christianity should be the only religion in America. Slavery was, or the Bible was used by white people to justify slavery. Okay? And it's this notion that you are better than people who are not white, right? Who are not Christian, and you think you operate on a higher plane. And that's something that Donald Trump aligns with, even if he isn't the most devout man, even if he isn't the most religious individual in the world. But again, Christian fundamentalists, they take the Bible literally. Everything, there's nothing wrong in the Bible. They take everything as fact. So when you do that, you understand how it's been used to harm people so much, it makes sense why we see that with Donald Trump, who's harmed so many people with his words, his actions, and his campaign. For Rebel HQ, I'm Chris Williamson. We'll see you next time.